You want to know what the magic number of net migration? That hasn't really changed. 1.3, roughly 1.3 million people coming in, and the people leaving is pretty constant every year, about 500,000. So it really it doesn't really show that net migration is coming down. In fact, it's still going up. The majority are work and students. Work visas are up by 54%. But the interesting thing is skilled worker visas are up only 9%, whereas the social care workers have doubled. So it sort of identifies where there's a need. Study visas are up by 8%. To 643,000, and that's because the government have cracked down on dependents, and that's why there hasn't been a bigger increase, I think. The returns is interesting because we had an increase of 54% of people that we're enforcing returns, but that's still only less than 2,000 people in a year. So that's not really a good track record, especially when you think that there's estimates of over 1 million people that are in the UK illegally. So I'd like to know what the government are doing to track them down and removing them from the country. Families is up quite a lot, by 79%. So what that shows is British nationals are marrying more overseas and bringing family members to the UK. Most of them will be partners. And that's quite interesting as well. The other interesting point is the sponsor licensing. So there's a huge increase in the number of companies applying for a license to bring foreign workers. In the last 3 months of 2023, there were 10,800 decisions, an increase of some 56% from last year. So what it shows is companies are looking to recruit from abroad. The government needs to invest. We need to recruit local workers, British nationals, settled people. And the government needs to have a dedicated minister dealing with that.
Ivan, a lot of people listening will pick up on the figure you mentioned, 2,000 people kicked out, if that's the right expression. It's not many when you consider 30,000 crossing the Channel every year. And many of those, I suspect, are illegal, are economic migrants and therefore shouldn't qualify to stay here.
Absolutely, I'm really 100%. Funnily enough, voluntary returns is up by 74%, which was 17,301 people voluntarily leaving the UK, and the bulk of them were Albanians because of the crackdown on Albanians here.
But those would be considered voluntary returns as opposed to having to be sent back because we have the returns agreement with Albania.
Yes, I mean, enforced returns. It's pretty dreadful. And when you consider the amount of money Border Force has, the number of officers it has out there, it begs the question what they're doing.
What do you think they are doing? Because they don't appear to be doing their job.
I think the government's focus really is so much on stopping the boats. Their energy is stopping the boats. We have a huge problem in illegal migration within the UK. There's over 1 million people, unaccounted for individuals, illegally in the UK. And nobody's talking about that, which is quite astonishing. The numbers coming across the channel are quite small, 26 to 40,000 people a year. It's the ones that we don't see, Andrew and Bev, the ones that are unaccounted. And we need to secure our borders. We need to get a handle on it. To make sure, and you'll know the Home Office inspector was recently sacked. I'd be interested to see the rest of those reports that the government is sitting on, because I would imagine much of that is to do with the inaction, inefficiency of Border Force.
And they may be concentrating on the small boats, Ivan, but they're not stopping them. They appear to just be acting as a welcoming party.
Well, look, it's difficult because we need Albania returns agreement worked. We need to have similar agreements with other countries. We should have an overarching agreement with the EU itself, so that people can be returned as they used to be under the Dublin Convention when we were in the EU. So we need an overall agreement.
Did we really send? People always say that, Ivan. How many did we send back when we were under the Dublin Convention? They were pouring in the back of lorries. They weren't sending them back.
You're right. I think you're right, there were, and we couldn't see them. But I think the latest figures I saw was 70,000 a year were sent back under the Dublin Convention. So it did work to some extent, I think. But the problem, we're not sent, I think we've sent the small boats people. I don't think anybody's been sent back, not a single person.